20 more seconds. Okay, finish up your thought. And we're going to transition now to our last question, which is, what are the threads that you're weaving in at this moment? Or what intentions, what threads do you want to bring in at this moment into the fabric of you? Or maybe into the fabric of us, or maybe into the fabric of the world. And if it's a day like how some moments have been for me, where that sort of big picture existential stuff doesn't feel accessible, like comes to us through the 12-step tradition of like, what's the next right thing? Like just the next right thing after this breath, this next mark on my paper, the letter A, you know, whatever it's going to be, that's also perfect and gorgeous. So it can be new stories, new materials, new hopes, practices, intentions, relationships, or it can be, I'm going to pick up the red crayon. Anything in that range. I'm going to put my hand on my belly. I'm going to bring my breath all the way down there. 2 minutes on the clock. So we'll let our pens rest for a moment. And just taking a quick poll, we want to see, it sounds like a few folks have just notebooks or just paper handy, like paper-based materials. Raise your hand if that's you, if paper is the thing that's accessible right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, cool, about half of us. And so the other half of us has fabric. So it seems like we'll actually go through, the steps are similar for both materials, and the metaphor is similar, and of course, tactily, it feels pretty different. So Ava and I we'll kind of demo the same steps through both sets of possibilities materially. And we'll do this relationally, dyadically together. That way we can sort of talk through, have a conversation and be with each other in each other's stories for a moment. And how a weaving works, yeah, is it has a structure. It's like architecture. So there is vertical threads or papers that are called the warp. And those are sort of what hold the horizontal or weft strands in. So once we create our vertical structure, then we can go over, under, across the like horizontal plane. So we are going to start by preparing what we're going to be weaving in horizontally to the structure. So our weft threads. So for me, that's strips of paper. For someone working with fabric, that would be choosing or cutting your strips of fabric or ribbon or washi tape that you want to weave in.
So I'm going to start by cutting some strips of paper. So yeah, whatever you are prepared to weave in, go ahead and start that.
In our original exercise with burlap, it was so clear to us how we were pulling out very viscerally what we no longer needed. And in the cutting in this version is sort of the moment of, this was an extant rectangle of paper that had its own floppy, malleable structure, but it had a pretty rigid organic structure nonetheless. That was pretty if this stays a rectangle even when I hold it and make it pliable. And by introducing the scissors and starting to cut it into strips, like I'm starting to acknowledge that I'm ready and willing and able to really break irreparably in some ways the extant structure of the fabric of this part of who I am, and I'm ready to reclaim those materials and those parts for a structure of my own choosing today, or in this moment, or in this way. So Ava and I, in our one-on-one, were able to speak pretty openly about that, and it's something that you can take a minute to think, just the visceral action of cutting and the sound and the feeling of the blade on the fibers of the paper is a pretty, like whether you're making an incision or a tear or a sharp cut, it's a strong act to make a cut in material that way. So it's an invitation to think about, like, what am I ready to cut, even as that act can't be undone.
And once you're ready, if you have your paper or fabric that you want to weave into, so that would be making the vertical warps, you can start cutting that. What I'm doing, maybe I'll get a little closer here. I'm cutting vertically and I'm leaving them attached at the top. So I'm not cutting all the way to the top. So it's kind of like a fringe here, if that makes sense. And I'm gonna do that all the way across. And
if you're also a person whose weft or horizontal threads are already cut, already exist, we've been playing around with writing some of our intentions onto those as well, or braiding some together. So if the cutting action isn't the right one for you, you can think about starting to braid in the actual words or to braid your actual weft threads as the beginning of an integrative action also.
yeah, so this is an example of that. I don't know if you can see it, but I wrote some of my notes from my journal onto the strips.
So for fabric folks, so I picked up a garment that couldn't be mine anymore. And I, similarly to how Ava demoed with the fringed paper, I did a similar action, except I didn't fringe all the way through. So I actually took, for this garment, I picked up a pastel, or a piece, you can use a piece of chalk or even a Sharpie if your fabric is lighter in color than mine. And I drew a set of, and yours can be as wobbly as they need to be, or if you can grab a ruler if that's your thing. I drew a set of vertical lines, and then I actually just stuck my scissor in and I made an incision rather than a fringe, because I wanted my woven element to be a panel in the middle of the garment on the one hand, and on the other, I didn't want my additions to fall out the bottom with this sort of wiggly cotton fabric. So the recommendation is to come up with a length of a line that feels like a nice length of line for you, and then start making a series of probably 1 inch or wider spaces, and you can make a series of anywhere between 4 and 12 vertical lines on your garment. Mine are just under a foot long.
For folks who are ready to start weaving, so you can take your strips that you made and start going over, under your verticals. And I already did one, and I went under first over here. So on this next one, I'm gonna go over first so that it's alternating. And then that way we will create some structure. So over, under, and then under, over for the next one. I have a feeling a lot of us have done this before, but just in case.
For folks who just came into the room, we've been writing, we just took a couple minutes to write out what makes up the fabric of who I am. It could be in the big picture or the fabric of who I am coming into this room today. And that can be physically, materially, that can be the stories that make up my sense of myself, and any myriad other ways of interpreting that. We then took a couple minutes to think about what parts of the fabric of who I am, what threads from that woven structure am I ready to start pulling out? Am I willing to reduce from that woven structure in order to make room to like make a valve or feel like a fish with gills, to make new room and new air, to bring in new colors, new materials, new stories. So you can take a couple minutes to write on that if you'd like to, or you can just have those in mind as intentions and join us in the weaving.